o'clock on the dot. So my name is Linda Haglund and I am with the Wenatchee Downtown Association, and it is a privilege this morning to be able to moderate, or as I told the commissioners, put them on the hot seat. I don't get a chance to do that very often. A special thank you to Jake Davison and American Family Insurance. They sponsor this series and our programs at the Chamber. And this is, remember, just one of two. Next Wednesday at this same time will be the similar conversation, only with our mayors. This is put on by the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce, specifically their advocacy committee. And I want to thank them for seeing true value in business and community connecting with our elected officials in this way. I also want to say a special thank you to Rosa. Rosa's behind the scenes. This is in her wheelhouse at the chamber, and she's keeping us all on track. So this morning, it's going to run pretty smoothly. I'm going to start out by introducing each specific commissioner, and then I'll get you right into your first question, and then I'll go into the next commissioner. So first up, representing District 1 in Chelan County, is Commissioner Kevin Overbay. Kevin, just a little bit about when you were elected, and then your first question today. In your own mind, tell us about 2021. What were the big initiatives or themes, and what do you feel like you accomplished last year?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. I was elected actually in 2016, started my term in 2017, and then basically was successful in obtaining the second term here just about a year ago. So we're just starting into our second year of our second term. And so to the big themes in 2021, there were a lot of things that Chelan County worked on. Some things both as county commissioners, county specific, and other things that we worked on in the roles that we played, because we sit on various boards. And so one of the big things was actually the health district sustainability and being able to stand the health district up. It had a lot of internal pieces that needed to be reconnected, and bringing Luke Davies in at the helm of that and dealing with the COVID pandemic was one of the big accomplishments that we were able to get with regards to an external entity piece. But a lot of things, one of the biggest things for the Chelan County Commissioners was actually short-term rental code and getting that put into place. It was 2 years in the crafting, and we were able to come with a finalized code, which is now being implemented. We have over 800 applicants right now that are going through the process. And so we were able to kind of get that solidified. Other things that we'd worked on in Chelan County were a water mitigation code, which basically is very important for the growth of the county well into the future, to ensure that we have water availability for that growth for new residents and businesses throughout the different watersheds within the county. We did successfully complete our critical areas in shoreline master program updates, which is important for the natural resource pieces. The county did take over management of the homeless housing funds from the city of Wenatchee in about mid-year, and we were able to bring Sasha Slayman on board. And she has done a fantastic job of managing that, and we were able to get that interlocal agreement with the Douglas County Commission. And so she is actually managing the funds for homeless funds for both, and we were able to do that seamlessly to provide those resources within the community. The other piece was our ability to provide housing support to the housing trusts so that they have 3 years of housing support through our 2060 funds, and that was both the Housing Authority for City of Wenatchee and Chelan County, as well as the 3 housing trusts that we have located in Chelan County area. On the economic development piece, partnering with the port with regards to industrial development pieces in the Malaga area and south portion of the county. And then moving forward with a Malaga Mercado partnership with the school district on property that they have there, as well as moving forward with the potential of a forest products campus that would serve the 3-county area, Okanagan, Chelan, and Kittitas County. And then the other piece that we were able to successfully stand up to 2021 was the Cascade Public Infrastructure Fund, which is the 0.09 rural county tax dollar remittance that came back, and we were able to provide over $700,000 to entities to upgrade water systems and other things throughout the county. And then under the tourism recreation piece, we're working on a riverfront park piece in concert with the PUD's relicensing in the Malaga area. And then we were successfully completed the Chelan County Pathways Plan, which is a plan that would actually potentially connect communities throughout Chelan County with pathways. So quite a busy year. The last piece that we have been working on for a year and we'll continue to work on is a regional diversion facility to divert those folks with mental illness from our jails and hospital rooms into a regional facility by standing up a behavioral health unit to work with our law enforcement, as well as being able to provide these services both pre and post incarceration, as well as getting folks out of incarceration and stopping recidivism. So those are just a few of the things that we took care of in 2021.
Wow. So if you're out there listening, by the way, we have a pretty substantial number of people joining us that are really interested in what you both have to say today. I'm sure there'll be some questions out there. Please feel free to use the chat. Rosa will monitor that, and there will be time at the end to ask your questions. So if you're worried about forgetting them, just throw them in the chat and we'll get on it. So next up, thank you, Commissioner Overbay. Now representing District 3 in Douglas County is Commissioner Marc Straub. Marc, when were you elected? And you get to talk a little bit about your 2021 and some progress you made.
Good morning, Linda. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to once again get to do this. I had the opportunity last year as chair and once again serving chair of our board. Pleased to be here. I was elected in 2018, took office in 2019, so I'm in my 4th year of my first term, and it's been quite a ride. In terms of 2021, we spent, obviously, as Commissioner Overbay spoke of, spent a great deal of time addressing COVID, as everybody has, and the resulting restrictions, both from a county perspective and as a member of the Board of Health. One of our big efforts in 2021 was working on the annexation agreement with the city of East Wenatchee. This will be a sizable annexation, and the first one that's happened in Douglas County for, I believe, 16 years. So worked extensively with the city to iron out that agreement, and that will take effect by the end of June this year. We spent a great amount of time addressing damage and losses resulting from the Pearl Hill fire up in the northern county in my district. Significant damage to infrastructure, and that is an ongoing effort, but a lot of that damage has been repaired. Had a significant effect on our ranchers through the loss of grazing land, and as well as some habitat that's very significant up there. So that's an ongoing effort. We too spent a great deal of time amending our shoreline master plan. We were very pleased with some of those amendments and being able to reduce buffers in areas that just didn't make sense, in really helping our private property owners in that regard. Also joined Chelan County in welcoming Okanagan County onto the Tri-County Horticultural Pest Board. And as most know, apple maggot is a real threat to our tree fruit industry, and having Okanagan join in that effort, what happens in Okanagan affects us in Douglas County and in Chelan County too. That's a significant, obviously a significant industry, and with this, we really put some horsepower behind addressing the apple maggot threat. We spent a great deal of time refining our development codes for efficiencies and predictability of outcomes. That's something that the Board of County Commissioners is very passionate about, making certain that our codes are as predictable as possible, and making sure that Douglas County is open and welcoming to doing business in our county. We addressed facilitating additional growth in our Baker Flat industrial area, specifically roads infrastructure needs out there. Addressed adding language in our code to facilitate regulating the permitting and siting of large scale alternative energy facilities like wind and solar. That has been an ongoing issue, but we did some significant work to put some sideboards within our code to address those, like I said, the siting of those facilities in the future. Ramped up our efforts in cleaning up homeless encampments in Douglas County, as well as approved, as Commissioner Overbay alluded to or mentioned, our interlocal agreement with Chelan County to administer our homeless plan. And then also worked on an interlocal agreement to participate in the East Cascade multi-jurisdictional SWAT for continuity of tactical response. I think that's really important for public safety, and we were pleased to be able to participate in that moving forward. So those are just a few of many issues that we worked on in 2021 and continue to work on moving forward.
Thank you so much. Again, if you're joining us, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or we'll have time at the end. Okay, you two, here's the loaded question. American Rescue Funds. Looking now that there seems to be pretty clear guidelines on how those funds can be spent, how do you see those funds impacting our community, your counties, and this region? The big question is, how do you see those being used? And I don't care who takes it first. You two can choose, or if you don't, I'll pick.
Well, I can go ahead. You know, I think most know that in 2020 through the CARES Act, we committed over $1 million of our CARES funding in the form of small business grants, and that was administered through the regional port. And we continue to look for avenues with the ARPA funding to be able to do that moving forward. Thus far, of our ARPA funds, we received about $8.4 million in funding. And so far, we've spent approximately, or committed approximately $3.6 million of that total. Some of the bigger commitments that we've made are to the health district in joining Chelan County in a sizable commitment, which was in addition to the $100,000 of our CARES funding that we allocated to the health district. We put another $379,000 toward that, you know, with the idea of hoping to stand up or strengthen some of the areas within CDHD, including the environmental health side of that, but definitely affects housing and the affordability issue around housing. We made some sizable equipment contributions to our fire districts in the form of ambulance, new ambulance equipment for some of those rural areas that serve areas that nobody else serves. We have a large commitment to our Superior Court to address backlogs that were resulted from the COVID restrictions. And so moving forward, we're taking an approach right now to look at where we can best leverage the remaining portion of the funds to do the best for our citizens and have the most leverage moving forward, which will also include taking a look at our farmers and ranchers as well, because they suffered greatly through COVID, and we want to make sure that we're addressing their needs moving forward. So that's where we're at right now. But as I say, the effort or the objective on our side is to make certain that we're leveraging those dollars the best we can, making smart decisions moving forward with those dollars so we get the best results for our citizens.
Thank you. Commissioner Overbay.
Absolutely. I'll dovetail on a couple of things that Mark said. We too are looking at the agricultural industry. We utilized $1 million of the CARES funding as well for local business pieces. but that was not geared towards the ag industry. There was some ag pieces that were provided, but some of those were not able to be advantaged or leveraged for some of the smaller ag producers that we have in our communities. And so we're looking at what some of the ag pieces are. There were some restrictions and some new safety protocols that were done under emergency orders that actually increased the responsibilities of ag producers for their workforce. They've had a issue with regards to freight mobility, overseas container pieces and all sorts, and that have really kind of taken its toll. And so we're looking at and working with the ag industry on how we might be able to assist with standing up some of those pieces on a local level. The other piece is for Chelan County. We've actually contracted with Moss Adams to assist us. We received $14.97 million to the county. And so taking a look at this piece, we need to ensure that the funding is at least allocated or has an allocation destination by the end of 2024 and have until the end of 26 to allocate those funds out in their entirety. And so we wanted to be deliberate. There's a lot of funding sources currently that are still coming in from state and federal sources, and we didn't want to duplicate efforts. We wanted to be very deliberate and look for those basic areas that are blind spots that aren't being covered by other funding sources, whether on the state or federal level. We did team up with Douglas County to assist, as Marc had mentioned, some funding to the health district. We are looking at other entities, nonprofit organizations that provide services that are unique in the community, like the Center for Drug and Alcohol Treatment, and a potential facility for them. The upside of the new rule, we did not suffer revenue loss because we saw revenue increases in our lodging tax and other sources that because folks came to Chelan County to visit during COVID, and we were basically discovered. And so that basically was across the board. It was an aggregate. If there was a loss, we did not suffer a loss. But one of the elements of the new rule does allow for a $10 million extraction of those funds into local government purposes that do not fit or have to fit the strict criteria of spending, whether it be capital or otherwise. And so our board is actually choosing to go ahead and pull that into a separate account that allows us to be able to stand up some infrastructure pieces, both within the county for county facilities, as well as looking for some external opportunities within the community. And so as we work through that process, we're just now getting underway with Moss Adams to identify those particular areas, and then be trying to be very deliberate about what those needs are as these other funding sources, kind of wane of how we will be able to stand this up, not just this year when we get our second tranche, but over the next 4 years. So.
I have a follow-up question to that. I know that won't surprise you too. But when this money was announced, there was a perception in the community that there's a flood. Someone described it as a fire hose of money, right? Coming through. Were there any surprises when all this came out without really any sideboards, regulations, or rules on how you could spend it? Was there any surprises once the final rules came out to what you perceived you could spend this on?
Well, it was funny, Linda. I'll jump in on that if you don't mind. It was funny when we first were told about this funding. It was like it was a free for all. We could spend it on whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. And as time went on, and before we received the funding, we started to see those sideboards, and the expenditure, the ability to expend that funding continued to get more narrow and narrow and narrow. And I will say that the biggest surprise to us was not necessarily under the final rule of the restrictions that were put on the funding, because when it was first announced, there were none. And now there, of course, as Treasury gets a hold of it, you continue to put restrictions on. But the biggest one was actually the ability for entities to take up to $10 million and just basically put that back into government operations. And I would say that was probably the biggest benefit of the final rule, because what it does is it allows us to be the stewards, just like we are the stewards of our regular budget. It allows us now that $10 million infusion to be able to actually put into the community without the sideboards that are written into the Treasury rules. For Chelan County, the additional 4.97 will fall under those sideboards, and we'll have to make sure that we meet that criteria. And while we will still continue to be diligent about how we look at that 10 million, that 10 million piece will actually fall under the audit rules for the state. And so, it is basically going to be the ability, it actually freed up the ability for us to use that for a greater purpose, I think, to a greater end, without having the restrictions. So that's basically what I would say, how it kind of morphed for us in Chelan County.
Commissioner Straub, there you go.
Yeah, so I would absolutely agree. At the start, it was kind of a free-for-all, or the perception of a free-for-all. So it, in many ways, it gave a wrong impression, whereas we knew that there were a number of sideboards that we had to adhere to. It became an effort of making certain that folks understood that we couldn't or didn't have the latitude at that time to simply go out and spend it as we wished necessarily. I will say that with the final rule, we spent a tremendous amount of time, both myself and staff, looking at making sure we were aware of the ever-changing rules, so that as we were making decisions, that we were making those decisions without the fear of future repercussions. With the $10 million rule that Kevin spoke of, it does now provide us with that more of a latitude to be very intentional about how we spend invest the remaining portion of our allocation. And so that is right now what we're really looking at. How do we, as I said before, how do we best use those funds to get the best leverage, most leverage to serve our communities?
Yeah, thank you. I want to applaud you both. I think what we learned from our Valley Our Future initiative is that the collaboration goes a long ways, and it was really good to hear how you're collaborating together on those and the use of those funds. You know, COVID has seemed to divide us again, and that collaboration, I believe, is more important now than ever. Okay, moving on. As far as, and look at it maybe under the lens of businesses, because remember, that's really who the chamber serves. What do you see for challenges for business in our communities in 2022? And I'll start with you, Commissioner Straub, and then move to Commissioner Overbay.
Sure, thank you. So looking at 2022, I mean, I don't have to tell anybody this. I'm sure all businesses are experiencing this right now, and that is the deepening supply chain issues combined with inflation. That's going to continue to be a real issue moving forward in 2022. It's affecting the counties, I should say, in very similar ways to private sector. I think that is it's going to really require some out-of-the-box thinking moving forward. I think that, again, access to labor at all levels, this is affecting, again, the counties as much as the private sector. I think it's a real paradigm shift that we're looking at right now. It was started before COVID, but I think COVID helped to accelerate it. I think that it's playing out to be very disruptive. It's costly. I know for the county, it's disruptive in our ability to deliver services. It's costly in the fact that as we try to fill open positions, we have to be competitive, and that being competitive changes quickly because obviously supply and demand, and we have to respond to that. So it drives up costs just as it does in the private sector. So that affects our taxpayers. Again, it affects our opportunity to serve service levels and continuity of service. Accessing affordable housing, we're on a breakneck pace on affordability. In my previous life, I spent nearly 20 years advocating on behalf of affordable housing. I think back in 2002, the median home price was around $185,000, if I'm not mistaken. Just in the last 5 years, we've gone from, I believe, $269,000 to over $440,000 in terms of our median sale price. It comes down to, in my opinion, it's significant demand outstripping supply. I mean, it's simple supply. and demand and supply. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but at the same time, we are a very desirable area to live, and we have a significant demand. And in my opinion, too, the Growth Management Act has probably been the most, I guess, the most harmful piece of legislation in the last 30 years affecting housing affordability. And so Douglas County is working to address the issue by making sure that we're reducing regulatory burdens within our code wherever possible, making, like I referenced before, making sure that our code is as predictable, efficient, and minimalistic. Minimalistic meaning that we are not going to be a county plus, or excuse me, a state plus one county. You know, all those regulatory costs go into the death by 1,000 cuts that I often describe housing affordability. And so that's something that we strive to address and continue at Douglas County to address. And then I think transportation challenges. That we have 1,640 miles of roadway in Douglas County alone. And so keep maintaining those roads is expensive, but it's critically important to our ag sector for farm to market, for example. It's incredibly important to our businesses that we have a good road system. You know, and growth is causing dramatic impact on the use of our roads. And so we're also seeing, in conjunction with that, eroding gas tax revenues. We're seeing, you know, the annexation, for example, that I spoke of earlier, is going to have a real effect on Douglas County to the tune of about a loss of about $1 million. That hampers our ability to maintain our roads. And then we see, just as in the private sector, escalating costs that are attributable to state and federal regulations, as well as raw materials and labor. These all drive up the costs in our ability to maintain and preserve our roads, let alone build new roads. And so this affects our businesses in a real direct way. And so I see that as continuing to be a challenge in 2022. And then lastly, it's particularly in Douglas County, the change in our legislative districts. That's going to really present a challenge for us moving forward. The majority of Douglas County will be moved into the 7th legislative district, with a good portion of East Wenatchee being carved out and remaining in the 12th district. It creates a whole host of issues for the Board of County Commissioners, for our citizens. And so we're going to be working that and developing those relationships in the 7th. I know the legislators in the 7th, they're great legislators, but it's going to, you know, take time to build those relationships. And that's going to have an effect on our businesses in both Chelan and Douglas County, well, particularly in Douglas County. So those are the issues that I see in 2022 that will continue to affect not only our small businesses, but our county as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Straub. Before I bounce to Commissioner Overbay, remember, if you have any questions, here's your chance. Put them in the chat, and then we'll monitor those and make sure they get asked. Commissioner Overbay, you're on.
You know what? Mark took all my talking points.
No.
I highly doubt it.
You know, I actually, we have a lot of similar talking points with regards to the, you know, it's going to be what I see to be a COVID transition year, where we're transitioning away from response and actually looking at, you know, trying to get some semblance of pre-COVID normalcy in our community as we continue to move forward. But a lot of the challenges that we'll see, especially business-related challenges, because that was really kind of the formation of your question. I agree with Mark on the workforce housing piece. You know, with Chelan County, we're really looking at working with our legislators, especially this session. There's actually 3 bills, that 2 from the Chelan County area, and then 1 from Jefferson County, that would really potentially help us make a dent in some of this housing, the workforce housing piece. And you know, Senate Bill 5868 is Senator Hawkins' bill that was teed up to utilize the expansion of the 09 funding to assist with workforce housing and workforce housing infrastructure pieces, and which leads to the utility pieces and the infrastructure that needs to go in for this housing, whether it's electric, wastewater, water itself, and the cost associated with that. I know that currently right now, the Chelan County PUD provides a reduction at up to 80% AMI. Having conversations with them if this legislation gets passed, if that can be extended to 120 AMI for those workforce housing project pieces. The other piece is House Bill 1333, which is an extension of the 09 funding. So that 09 funding source is looking to basically expire around 2032. This would extend that funding to 2054. So that would give us a lot longer time period to be able to bond against that funding for these projects, the workforce housing projects. And then House Bill 1908, which is Representative Steele's bill, which basically allows for municipalities to surplus properties to housing trusts or housing authorities for the purposes of workforce housing. That bill is currently crafted up to 120% AMI as well. And so that's really would be a big opportunity. When I was asked about the tie to economic development, because that's really what that 09 account is for economic development. And when I was asked about that, workforce housing is huge for basically recruitment and retention of individuals within any business sector. And the ability for us to be able to provide that housing within our community, just since I've been in office, when I came in 2017, median house price was $280,000. And now we've eclipsed $500,000 in a mere 5 years. And so that is a huge offset, almost double of what it was in a 5-year period. And that really takes its toll on the ability for families to continue to reside in the local area. I had earlier kind of jokingly mentioned that, we were discovered during COVID. Chelan County and Douglas County areas were discovered during COVID. A lot of folks came here to escape the cities and so forth. Well, that basically has perpetuated growth within our community. And so we've seen a large scale of growth, which, brings different viewpoints, brings different needs and requirements for folks that are moving to the community. But it also takes its toll on our natural resources and other elements, so when we look at our tourism industry, the ability for us to provide response to the overuse of our existing natural resource areas and tourism areas, and being able to stand those pieces up as we move forward. And whether it be through maintenance and operations pieces or the development of new capital projects within that are related to tourism and improves the quality of life for the citizens within the two-county area. The other piece that is going to be huge, which I know that when speaking with our partners at the PUD, is broadband build out, and the ability for that continued build out where we have more folks that are moving to the area, more demand on that particular system, but the ability to build that system out to 100% over the coming years. I know that there's a goal of about a 75% build out for Chelan County now by 2026. I know the county is working diligently as a partners in trying to identify funding sources. Oftentimes, if you're first at the table and you jump in front of something and get out ahead of things, sometimes you get penalized down the road because of your forethought. So it makes it a much more competitive market for us with all the broadband dollars that are coming in, because the focus is on communities that have not built out. And oftentimes the communities that are built out and that are trying to kind of finish the build out are kind of pushed to the side. And so our ability to try to leverage funding for that particular piece that would encourage that. And then the final piece that I wanted to add to this was the ability for us to look at educational opportunities and work with the business community to identify gaps in skill sets, to identify what would be needed within the business community, and try to stand up that educational piece utilizing college, skill source, and other elements within our community that either exist or may need to exist to continue to provide workforce for the folks that right now that basically because of the recruitment retention issue. So there's just a couple of additional things that I would add to Marc's comments.
It's good to hear you both when you look at the challenges. I know what we're hearing community-wide when people are trying to attract workforce into this area. You have really two diverse counties, really, when you look at it, right? But what attracts people here are our natural resources, are where we're at located. But the difficulty in attracting workforce is that housing component. So it's really good to hear you. I know as people are looking to attract upper management, housing is their number one concern. If you're going to move here, it's a beautiful place. Where are you going to live? So it's really good to hear that you both identify those challenges in our region right now for those housing issues. I just want to say is, before we get to the question, we have one in the chat. I want to ask you both, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Overbay. Being an elected official in these times is not for the faint of heart. And so I thank and applaud you both for serving and leading through these difficult times. Is there a personal initiative that you have in this year in 2022 that you would like to see happen? Where do you want to see your personal energies go as you look countywide?
For me, Linda, I would have to say my number one initiative for me personally is the regional diversion facility. Coming out of COVID, we are going to see, and we have seen, a lot of mental health issues that are starting to really impact our community, and that and substance abuse. And so we're going to need to have something that's going to be able to respond to our citizens and have something that has not been the traditional piece. There's been a lot of gaps in the system. The system is not perfect by any stretch. And I'm not saying that we'll have a perfect system, but we have actually and have been working on this for a year, a collective of partners in the 4 county areas. So that's Okanagan, Douglas, Grant, and Chelan counties, that are mental health professionals, that are from the prosecutor's offices, that are representing the judicial, representing law enforcement, representing prevention, and service providers. And we are trying to craft, what does this look like? Can we actually do a regional diversion facility that would assist folks that could either voluntarily commit themselves to the facility, could be involuntarily committed, or be judicially committed to the facility. But it's also about the prevention piece. We started off with a behavioral health unit that Chelan County has stood up to assist our law enforcement. But it's not just about the law enforcement piece. It's about ensuring that folks are getting the services that they need. That if in fact they aren't making their appointments, that we have a ability to get those folks connected again, and ensuring that these folks are viable contributing members to the community. The jail is not the place for the mentally ill. The mentally ill need to ensure that they have the proper services and the proper environment to become healthy and successful. And what this will do is this will also save taxpayer dollars. Right now, outside of the current legislation that was passed last year, that basically affords for medical treatment for 30 days on the Medicaid piece, basically folks that are incarcerated lose that benefit, which means that we are fortunate at our jail to be able to have mental health services. But it basically, the taxpayers are paying into a system that cannot be used for the incarcerated. And so, and this is folks that are incarcerated prior to standing trial. And so the ability for us to be able to provide an alternative to that, where they're not in a jail cell, but they're actually getting the treatment that they need, basically coming out from the other side of the process, will be much better for that individual, much better for the community as a whole. And it will be a cost savings to the taxpayer. And so at the end of the day, the ability for us to be able to stand this up is going to be paramount, not only for the health and welfare of the community as a whole, but the health and welfare of the individuals that really need to have this assistance. And we will see more and more of this as we continue to do our COVID transition. So that'd be my primary one.
Good, thank you. Okay, you're on the hot seat, Commissioner Straub.
Thank you. So mine are twofold. One, I definitely saw Kevin's vision for the diversion and bringing that to our area for all the reasons that Kevin outlined. It's critical that we make that happen. We talk a lot about homelessness and our plan to address it. And quite frankly, I don't believe that throwing more money at the problem addresses the underlying contributing factors to homelessness. We want to solve it. If we want to solve it, we have to address the underlying issues. And as Kevin said, diversion is the way to do that. And so being able to, in my county, educate our citizens as to why that makes sense and how they benefit from that is going to be critical to gain their support to make that happen, at least from our perspective. So again, that's something that I saw Kevin's passion for that. I'm 100% sold on it. And moving forward, I think that it's going to play a critical role in addressing some of our issues in law enforcement, as well as homelessness and other issues. Second to that is we're very passionate in Douglas County about instilling a culture that is business friendly and wanting to attract business to Douglas County. We don't necessarily have some of the amenities that Chelan County is blessed with in terms of tourism and other things like that. But we want to be open and ready for attracting business opportunities that provide for family wage jobs here. And in doing that, like I said before, it really means making certain that we are reviewing all of our codes and regulations to make certain that they're efficient, that they're predictable, that they're not overreaching. Basically, we want to not get in your way of success by adding already to the challenging environment that we're in to do business. And so we're looking at, again, being that minimalist approach to oversight and regulations to the extent possible. And so that's why we're really committed, especially this year, to doing that. We've brought on a consultant to take a look at our development codes, to analyze where our growth is happening so that we can best address that moving forward, so that we're ahead of the curve and not trying to play catch up. Like I said before, if you really want to address housing affordability, and move the needle in a meaningfully way, you've got to add to the housing stock at all levels. And you do that by making getting out of the way to the extent possible and allowing our builders and developers to do what they do best. And like I said, it's got to be at all levels. We're starting to see multifamily projects in Douglas County, which will help to move the needle in a meaningful way. But when you add to that housing stock, you add to that supply, prices come down. And that's what we will start to see if we can continue to do that. So it's all about, again, moving the needle in a meaningfully way. And we are dedicated to do that.
I'm kind of hearing you both say smart economic development. All right, smart economic development. So I do have a final question, but I'm going to go to the Q&A. The question is, did you say that the center will be getting a new facility? And if so, what would that look like? I think that was in regards to something Commissioner Straub, you said, maybe, or maybe Commissioner Overbay. I'm not sure what the center meant.
Yeah, that was actually, I think, part of when we were talking about the ARPA question and what that
okay.
like. And so about, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a feasibility study that was funded by a budget proviso from the legislature to look at the Center for Drug and Alcohol Treatment in Chelan County and understand that the center actually serves both Chelan and Douglas counties. And that's through an interlocal agreement that we have with Douglas County and Loretta and the group that provides that service to the community. And it found that the existing facility, which is currently owned by Chelan County, is aged. It's an aged facility. It used to be the dormitory for the nursing program for the Wenatchee Valley College some many years ago. And so basically the feasibility study looked at that, and the results of that was that it's not feasible for us to continue to put funding into that. And so we need to be looking at what would that look like for a new facility. And one of the pieces with the ARPA funding is the ability for us to use that for that type of purpose. And so that is one of the things that we are in conversation with the center to see about potentially finding them a new home. and standing that up to where they can actually expand their levels of service that they currently have right now. And so we're still in that process, and hopefully we can find an opportunity here very soon. And so that's one of the things that we are actively working on.
Thank you. And then in the chat also is from Alan Walker: support your effort for a diversion facility. Jail and the streets are not the answer to address mental illness and addiction. I would like to add the need to increase affordable and supportive housing in the 2 county areas critical. Thank you, Marc, for including an increase in the housing stock. So that's just a thank you, not specifically a question. So let me ask you something really quickly, and then I'm going to give you time. We're doing really well. I'm going to give you time to really kind of say anything that we missed. As a community, a business community, and a community overall, how can we help you? How do we connect with you? How do we intercept with you and help you in these efforts that are big facing our counties right now? And I'll start with you, Commissioner Straub, and then bump to Commissioner Overbay.
Sure, thank you, Linda. I would say that from our perspective, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so hearing from the business community is extremely important, especially as it relates to, as I said, our effort to instill that culture where we are, where businesses want to do business in Douglas County. And so if some of our best efforts in changing or tweaking our code comes from hearing from our businesses where they've experienced a challenge. And so we're able to take that and look at ways to address the challenge and do it in a meaningful way. So I guess what I'm saying is that open communication is really something that we value. Having our businesses and our citizens involved in our session meetings, for example, is a great way to communicate or share concerns. Whatever way that the business community elects to do that, just know that it's helpful for us, because you cannot govern in a vacuum. You can, but it's not very effective. And so having that two-way communication is really important.
Commissioner Overbay.
Yeah, basically, I actually had the same thing, the communication piece. Businesses can help us by providing a collective voice, identifying the challenge areas that they are experiencing, and that reaches across multiple business sectors. And basically, with those communication lines, maybe identifying to us possible solutions. And so for me, I would welcome the opportunity to meet with business, on a quarterly basis or whatever it might be, to kind of continue to take a look at and identifying these elements, but also working through those particular pieces, because it does take time to execute change. And so, not unlike Douglas County, looking at our codes as well, and how do what do we have that's standing in the way of successful business? Because that's the last thing that we want to do. And so the ability for us to hear from business, we hear from individual businesses, what they may be experiencing at that particular point in time. Is that a one-off, or is that something that is collective that other businesses are experiencing? So it's paramount for us to be able to hear from the citizens that we serve and the businesses that we serve, what is the issues and the challenges that they're facing, and what role do we play, as county government in trying to maybe overcome those hurdles.
So I know lots of times you hear from the people you serve when it's a little late. They're really, really mad because there was something. So when you said you don't know what you don't know, what is the best way for businesses to get a hold of you? Would it be via email? And then maybe explain a little bit for both of you when you say, Commissioner Straub, I know you're sitting in Waterville right now and talking to us. But your meetings, maybe where is a good way and how is a good way for businesses to connect with you? And Commissioner Overbay, I'll start with you and then bounce to Commissioner Straub.
Yeah, absolutely. Email is always the best way to get a hold of the commissioners. We are in and out of our offices. Even now, we are still doing things right now hybrid. We are doing Zoom meetings, but we will be looking to go back to in-person meetings. We did do it with the Omicron. We went from in-person back to Zoom just for the protection of everybody. But email outreach is really the best. That's something we read multiple times a day and can respond to very quickly, better than a phone call. But also I encourage folks to sit in on our sessions, now with, and we will probably be hybrid from here on out. So we'll be able to provide both an in-person and a Zoom experience for our citizens. And if they have some pieces that they want to talk to us about, they can reach out to the chair. I'm the chair of the board this year, and get a place on the agenda. And so if the chamber or the Downtown Business Association or any other collective group as a whole would like to come in, or even individuals would like to have time on the agenda to discuss items, just need to go ahead and we can do that in advance. We can reach out to Carly Beatty, which is our clerk of the board, and request time, or you could reach specifically out to any one of the commissioners and they would forward it through the chair. Marc and I happen to have the pleasure of being the chairs this year for each one of our boards. And so we're actually the primary point of contact for the agenda element.
Commissioner Straub, just before you go, Rosa has put both of your emails in the chat. So if you're out there listening, that's an easy way to grab it. Just copy and paste that. Commissioner Straub.
Thank you. Yeah, Kevin very eloquently put it well. So for us, we continue to meet in person at 19th Street in East Wenatchee on Mondays, and then up in Waterville on Tuesdays. We still have make available the ability to Zoom into our meetings if that's your preference, but know that you're welcome to be in person at either one of those two facilities. Again, being involved to the extent that if you see something on the agenda that interests you, really encourage you to sit in and listen. And as Kevin said, if you would like to be included on the agenda as chair, certainly get a hold of me, and I'm more than happy to do that. So it's really critical to have, again, that two-way communication, making certain that you know what's going on in the counties. And a good way to do that is to at the very least, follow the agendas. And again, if you have time, join in on those weekly meetings.
So the two of you don't get this chance very often to have this kind of an audience. So we have a few minutes left. Is there anything particularly you would like to say to business, or just parting comments? And I'll start with you, Commissioner Overbay, and then bounce to Commissioner Straub.
Yeah, first off, I appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to share what's going on in the county. Oftentimes, folks get busy in their day-to-day lives and don't really understand what's happening, or the things that are in process until all of a sudden it maybe impacts them. And so I do encourage folks that if you're interested, please take a look at our agendas. But the other piece is this, for me, is communicate with us, please. We are here to serve you. A lot of folks think that we're politicians. We're actually public servants. And, we really kind of look at ourselves as that such. And we're here to look at what is in the best interest of all citizens of the county. Not everybody's going to agree. But the one thing is we want your voice to be heard. You play a vital role to the success of our community and the quality of life as business owners and providers of services. And so, we can't do this without your assistance as well. Like Marc had earlier said, we can make a policy in a vacuum, but it's not good policy. And so we encourage folks to be a part of the process, to reach out to us when you have concerns. It may not be us that can deal with that, but we will definitely direct you to the right people that can. But for me, it's a matter of, I'm more than happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee with anybody, even though I don't drink coffee, and to discuss any issue that they have and make myself available, because that's really what you hired me to do. So just appreciate the opportunity to kind of share what's going on within our community.
Commissioner Straub.
Yeah, I would certainly echo that. And I'm glad that Kevin brought up the fact that we are not politicians. I bristle at that term. I do very much view myself as a public servant, and as such, we're here to do just that, to serve those citizens that depend on local government. And I think that, again, being able to do that well requires that we have a good understanding of what our citizens' needs are. And that's something that's always very fluid and always changing. And we're never going to, and one of the things that I've found in my first term, and that is that you're never going to make everybody happy. As much as we strive to do that, it's all about looking at how do we make decisions that that best suit the greater whole of our communities. And so that's what we strive to do. Do we do it perfectly? No. Are we striving to do it better each and every day? Absolutely. And so I guess I would just say, again, encourage folks to participate to the extent that you can. I know it's difficult. You're running businesses, been there, done that, and it's a challenge. But to the extent that you can, utilize the chamber to be that conduit. And I think that we can all reap the reward for that. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
You know, as we look at a region in the community, we've spent 2 years basically having to react, right, to things we had no control over. What I loved hearing you say today is your plans for the future. We need to look into the future of what this community region is going to look like in the years ahead for the generations to come. So I appreciate your vision, and keep up the good work, gentlemen, because we need you leading right now in this time. Again, those of you who are listening, thank you. Thank you again to Jake Davison for making this possible, and the chamber for putting this on. But I just want to say that in your sphere of influence, as you're listening today, and you hear other businesses talking about the challenges they face, encourage them to reach out to the commissions. Your business functions in a county. Yes, you may be in a city limit, but you're in a county. You're in one of these 2 counties if you're listening right now. So reach out before some of these issues get bigger and are harder to solve. And what I know about these 2 is they are about problem solving. And so I appreciate you being here, commissioners. Again, thank you for serving and leading in this incredibly difficult time. But I look forward with hopeful anticipation of this year ahead as we climb out, right? As you said, Commissioner Overbay, as we go forward through this time for progress, for business in our community. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And remember, we're right back here next Wednesday to put our mayors on the hot seat. And I get to do that too. Thank you, everybody.